Now, we'd be remiss if we didn't ask you about this. The people, them, with a cost for real. The issue of the salary increase of the MPs.
Yeah.
We spoke about unintended consequences, one of which was it pissed off a whole heap of people, especially with the backdrop of, numerous protests, public sector workers,
right,
and all these things. Looking back on it now, is there a different way that you would have rolled that out? And did you expect the backlash from the people when you did?
Right. Okay. So with the benefit of hindsight, there's always ways you can do things better, for sure. Right. What's the substance of that matter? The substance, that issue has been framed in the public domain in a way that is inflammatory. Right? It's been framed in a way that definitely leads to outrage. And the framing is politicians have gotten X% increase.
300.
Right? Whereas
the public sector got 20%.
No, well, that's not true either. The public sector wages have gone up by $200 billion, okay, over 3 years. For the Ministry of Health, including all the nurses and doctors, Ministry of National Security, including all the police and soldiers, all the police, Ministry of Education, including all the teachers, went up by just those three alone, went up by $100 billion over 3 years. Wow. Okay? Previous rounds of increases have been $10 billion for everybody. So when you understand the scale, okay, and not, we need at least people sitting in your chair to be honest. Numerical reasoning and honest reasoning as well. Okay? The numbers are there for everybody to see. Now, this is what essentially happened here is not an increase picked out of a hat. It is simply that for the last 50 years, ministers of government have gotten $1 more than permanent secretaries. Because permanent secretaries...
$1?
It's $1 per week more. So $52.
Oh.
Okay? That was the dollar per week was set in 1986. In 1972, it was set at $1 per month. Okay, so that's why I said over the last 50 years, ministers' salaries have been pegged $1 for 50 years over permanent secretaries. From 1972 to 1986, it was $1 per month. From 1986 to 2023, the time of this increase, it was $1 per week. All that happened, ladies and gentlemen, is that same principle is applied to a new salary scale.
That works for this climate?
No. So, in other words, permanent secretaries' salaries have been adjusted.
Yeah.
The people who report to permanent secretaries have been adjusted.
Yeah.
The people who report to them, everybody has been adjusted.
Yeah.
Cabinet ministers make $1 per week. So this is where permanent secretaries were. Cabinet ministers get $1 per week more. Permanent secretaries were arranged there. Cabinet ministers get $1 per week more. Meaning the same, talk about principles, the same principle that has been in place for 50 years has been applied to the new salary scale. This principle was in place the day before my statement in Parliament in May of 2023, and it is the same principle that operates today. The result of the principle is that there has been a significant movement in the salary, but it was not that there is a percentage that is chosen. It is simply, what do we want? Is it that we want to change a principle and have permanent secretaries earn more than ministers? That's a conversation we can have, right? Do we want them to earn, you have permanent secretaries, you have chief technical directors, you have heads of departments. We want the ministers to be, below people in the ministry. That's a conversation we can have. There are consequences of that.
Yeah, one of the reasons you gave, I believe, was to justify the pay increase was to incentivize politicians staying in politics and younger people coming.
No, okay. So as I said, this was not an increase for politicians per se. What this was we made a radical change in the public sector salary scales. The salary scales were like that from the entry level to the top level, and the salary scales did that. All right. In the old system, politicians are ministers are somewhere up here in the old system. They're not down here.
No.
They're somewhere up here.
Yeah.
Right? Now, when you move the salary scale from that to that, let's say to that, where are ministers going to be? They're going to be in the same relative position in the salary scale. So let me say it again. This was the previous salary scale, right? Bottom, top. Ministers of government were like here in the old salary scale. In the new salary scale, where the bottom is here and the top is way up there.
The bottom shifted to the top.
I'm not saying the bottom shifted up substantially. The bottom went up by about over 100%. People used to get $10,000 a week. The people who used to get $10,000 a week, come April of 2024, are getting $22,000 a week. Okay, so the bottom doubled. Okay, the top went up considerably as well. The position of ministers in the scale, the relative position, is exactly the same. We're in the same relative position. It's just that the scale is different and increased. All right. Now, is it that we want to change a relative position in the scale? We can have that conversation. But all we have done is to apply the same principle that's been around for 50 years. That if this is salary scale, that's where you put ministers.
And then it shifts. So it's just
right. No, we've changed the salary scale, so that's where ministers are. So what I did in that op-ed was not about ministers. It was about leadership in the country. Right? Because there wasn't just, we had principals of schools. What happened in our previous salary scales is that they were very compressed. The difference between entry-level teacher and principal was very narrow. And the experience is that there's no incentive for the best or for people who have the capabilities to go into leadership because you get all of the hassle of leadership, all of the administrative burden.
But not the perks of the money.
So what we did, if this was the teacher scale before, we did the same thing, right? We increased the management salaries significantly because we need, it's not going to have effect today. It's going to have effect over the long term. We need there to be greater competition for the jobs with huge responsibility.
You're right.
Okay? So I wrote that op-ed to explain that paradigm shift, that we are moving to a paradigm shift where we're going to put a premium on positions that have a big, meaning position that can affect a lot of people.
I mean, people hear that at least when they heard the op-ed, they heard...
Read the op-ed.
They heard... we need to enrich politicians because, we don't want them to leave politics. But what they probably heard was, at least what they know or what they feel is that politicians are already rich. Why do we need to enrich them?
Right. Yeah, and that would be a very unfortunate, untrue interpretation of the intent. As I said, that op-ed, first of all, addressed leadership across the public service. Leadership in teaching, in security, police, in health, in the civil service, and otherwise, right? That what this reform has done is to put a premium on for persons who are you're running $150 billion. We can't pay your market rate, but what we want is that the people who are below you, there's a difference so that we get the more competent. Many times in the public service, I don't want that. Too much work. I'm happy where I am. And the person is good as gold. Because the premium for the trouble was just not good enough.
Yeah.
So we're doing to put the premium so it makes a difference, guys. Having the right person in the position who can affect thousands or tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of lives makes a difference.
Absolutely.
Makes a big difference.
Because that's why brain drain is affecting our country.
Correct.
Yeah.
No, with respect to politicians, the other thing in the op-ed that I said is that when you look at, I went and I totally data-centric, fact-driven, right? Empirical, meaning testing reality, right? When you look at the number of persons who served in parliament from 1972 until present, there are about 300 persons who have served in parliament. And when you look at the median level of service, it's about 10 years.
Yeah, okay.
Okay? Parliamentary service is by no means, for the vast majority of persons, a career we think of the people what dominates our minds are the people who have been there for 30 and 40 years because those are the people we know best.
Yeah.
We see them.
Because we see them.
Yeah.
But so we think that this is a profession where people go in and just stay for 30, 40 years and just collect. No. The data is there that can prove it, show it. It's there. I have it. I can share it. When you look at the average service or the median service, half of people, 150 out of the 300 people who served in Parliament from 1972 served in Parliament for less than 10 years. So these are what we call, these are structural remuneration, right? It's not remuneration for an individual that they're going to have for the rest of their life, right? Politics is competitive. There's huge turnover. What we want is to have, though, levels of remuneration where people who have talent, who have responsibility, who are not born into wealth, can afford to make the transition into politics without disrupting their lives.
Yeah.
Right? So it makes it possible for more people to serve. Because even if you're going to serve for 5 years or for 9 years, for 3 years or for 10 years, what we're saying, during that period of service, you are a middle manager at a bank, or you have your small business in the country, or you are, some professional somewhere that you want to serve, you can make that transition without upending your life. And over time, not today, it won't be immediate, over time, the competition for those jobs, meaning the number of people who are now available. There are a lot of people who are not available because doing it would mean that they would have to engage in sacrifice. And and they're honest people. I'm not here to scrape anything, right? So I'm saying this is a systematic change for the long-term future of the country, way beyond my time, when you are gray and old, etc., etc.
I'm already get gray.
Oh, you're gray already?
Yeah.
That what we can continue to have is a Jamaica where across the society, people see it worth their while to take on the burdens of leadership, whether in the civil service or in the political arena.
Because I was thinking about you, that you were the head of your company, and you had to make a drastic shift.
Yes, and even what is here now
is still not compared. Pay increase
way below what I would have earned.
Is it worth it?
Right?
Again, why?
No. The point I'm making.
Earlier question.
No, so the point I'm making, to generalize beyond myself, is that if we have a country where only one, people who have inherited wealth, or two, people who own businesses can afford to serve in Parliament, what kind of country are we going to have?
The argument against, some of what you're saying is that people see business people enter in politics and then staying for a long time, and then they have to ask the question, why?
So we have a Jamaica where business people can afford, certainly in the previous dispensation when parliamentarians earned $3 million a year, that's a Jamaica where people who have other sources of income can afford to serve in Parliament. Is that the Jamaica you want? That's what, right? You have to look. Is that the Jamaica you want, where only people who have other sources of income can afford to serve in Parliament? Because doing their job as a journalist, doing their job out there, they might be making $5 million a year, but to come into Parliament, it would mean they make $3 million. So they can't do it. That's not a Jamaica that we want. No. It means that some people who have other sources of income, yes, will get higher salaries. But that's a consequence, no doubt. But the bigger impact is that the room of possibility is now open to a larger swath of the population to say, look, if you give up your private life, give up your one source of income, you can come and serve for a term or 2 or 3 or 4, right? But it's mostly, as I said, half of the people serve 2 terms or less. You can do that and not compromise
your way of living,
your standard of living.
Yeah.
And for a country like Jamaica, where leadership has been the issue. And by leadership, I don't mean leadership at the top of the country. What I mean is leadership throughout the society. You know,
across the board.
Across the board, we need some people, as unpopular as it is. Some people believe this is. Some people, not people in politics, whatever, believe that this is one of the most fundamental reforms that we have made. Because
the pay increase,
not the pay increase. Having
framing,
having structures in place that open up the possibility of parliamentary service to wider groups of people.
Pay increase make for shorter titles, Mr. Clarke.
Yeah, exactly. And it goes back to some of what we were talking about earlier, right? That, you know, if you're not motivated by principle, you're not going to bear that pain.
Yeah.
The pain that I went through by, you know, not pain, but you're not going to bear that. You're just going to do what is, you know, expedient and what is popular in the moment, right? But if you're motivated by conviction, by belief, by principle, you're prepared to pay a price for principle, right?